Fancy a walk in the woods? With a history dating back to the 1880s, Wauwatosa's Sanctuary Woods is a spot as good as any. Thanks to a recent discovery of old records, local historians are learning more about what happened in those woods when it was home to what was initially called the Milwaukee County Asylum for the Insane. Stephanie Rodriguez shares their fascinating findings in our Sunday morning spotlight.
Bring these things that were hidden by...
In 2017, Jonathan Peel was walking his dog through what is now County Grounds Park when mysterious structures piqued his interest.
And as I went through, I found relics of old infrastructure and gardens and other things inside the woods, and I didn't know what they were. And when I talked to other people, I got inconsistent stories about what they were. And so I felt compelled to find that answer.
After some digging, he found a history dating back over a century.
And I was able to piece together all these things that I'd found in the woods based on old maps, written text, old photographs, and it helped really bring together a story about the mental health hospital that had been established here in 1880.
The Milwaukee County Insane Asylum stood for 100 years here in Wauwatosa. During its run, strides were made to improve the health care people received, and now recently discovered documents reveal just how the day-to-day was for those who wandered these woods.
And this one is from 1880. It has a picture of the first inmate, and then it gives detailed information.
Milwaukee County Historical Society lead archivist Steve Schaffer says the newly found asylum images and ledgers collected dust for decades in a hospital basement.
In fact, we were told that anything pre-1940 had been destroyed.
Up until privacy concerns became prominent, doctors' notes detail who was committed and for what.
There are originally 275 patient beds.
Dana Landris is an expert on asylums and psychiatry in the late 19th and early 20th century who has reviewed some of the documents.
You can see a very wide variety of reasons and causations for admission. So this could be anything from a sort of general category of feeble-mindedness or lunacy to some instances of pauperism or petty theft. Dementia and senility, in fact, is a huge category of admission in this period. Women could be admitted for pregnancy out of wedlock, for sexual deviancy, for all sorts of things that today, of course, we would not consider to be a sort of diagnostic disease category.
Not long after the asylum was built, a hospital was constructed to treat patients medically.
This hospital was also revolutionary because it provided outdoor recreation for the patients in ways that weren't previously available. And this was a big difference from what had existed before 1880, which was essentially incarceration for patients.
A protective law in the late 19th century ensured every person admitted to a state asylum underwent a medical examination by 2 state physicians.
I'm not saying it was perfect, and it's limited by what they knew at the time. But for the time, the people that were interviewing the potential patients were the best in their field and knew what mental illness was or their conception of it.
Because resources were limited, patients were instrumental in keeping it up and running.
And so you have men who are performing institutional upkeep, doing work in the field, who might be constructing buildings or performing maintenance. And then you have women working in the laundry, working in the sewing rooms, working in the kitchen.
Long after their discharge, remnants of their creations still exist.
This is over 100 years old. It was built between 1907 and 1916. And again, this was work done by patients, an opportunity in industrial therapy for patients to learn a skill, motor work or things like that, that if once they were released, they may be able to use that in finding future employment and contributing to their economic stability.
In the later years, patients even took field trips.
The activities that they took people on, especially in the 50s and 60s, it's unbelievable. There were parties there were birthday parties, Halloween parties, all of that. And we have those shots.
The progress of the last few decades of the hospital doesn't reflect its entire existence. Many treatments were experimented with to help the afflicted.
They had continuous baths. For some patients, they would sit in a bath that would just have water running the whole time. And that was considered soothing. And so for patients who were agitated, give them the opportunity to have a continuous bath.
In the early 20th century, treatments were approached scientifically.
Insulin shock therapy, and this is something that is actually introduced in November of 1936. And the idea was really to provide enough insulin to place the patients in regular low blood sugar comas. And these could last anywhere from an hour to 4 hours.
Forced sterilization was also prominent, as there was a nationwide nationwide focus on eugenics. Patients rarely consented, often told they were getting appendectomies.
So many of the asylum superintendents introduced this legislation in order to curb what they see as the reproduction of the next generation. And that would often be a condition of women who are paroled back out into society.
While its history is complicated, the land thousands of patients called home is now one of Milwaukee County's newest parks, with volunteers like Peel working to preserve it.
I give history tours. We have other people who give cemetery tours or hydrology tours or mammal tours. So we are finding ways to bring hundreds of people into this space, a space that maybe, again, they didn't know about or they weren't comfortable coming into before.
Nicknamed Sanctuary Woods, the hope is this land will live on for generations to come. To learn more about the pieces of the past left behind, you can time travel online and see 25 points of interest that will give you an idea of life at the Milwaukee County Insane Asylum.